While audiophile products are quite known to have a sonic difference between them, what you wouldn't expect is that image and media players have a visual difference between them. And today we're reviewing something quite interesting. This is a media player, the PlayerOne 8K from Revolution, or R_Volution. This is the media player. It has a little door at the front, and if you open it, you will find a HDD bay or a hard disk bay. Quite cool. Otherwise, it has a ton of USB inputs and many outputs. The most interesting part is that it has multiple USB inputs, so you can connect external hard disk drives. I was able to run a 20 terabytes external hard disk, and I was able to read every single file on it, but more on this a bit later. You can run Ethernet. You need to run some kind of electricity to it, and it has its own internal switching power supply, but you can also connect a DC 12 volts external power supply, especially if you have a high grade audiophile one. It has an on-off switch, multiple antennas, including an RF antenna or radio frequency, and two Wi-Fi antennas. You can actually unscrew the antennas if you need to. There is a reset port at the back if you ever need to reset it, and it has an analog output, both analog audio RCA and coaxial. We also have an optical audio output, and it can even output HDMI out for a TV. That TV can output HDMI ARC signal to a DAC which has HDMI ARC functions. We have the optical output, and it can even output USB signal to an external DAC. While PlayerOne 8K is not that heavy, it is quite unwieldy to hold in your hands. And another cool stuff it has is the remote, because this remote also has illumination. It won't be quite that obvious, but it is illuminated quite good, especially for home theaters, as you typically have a home theater placed in total darkness and you would need some kind of illumination for the remote. Now, the whole point with a media player is playing your media files, which mainly includes videos, but it can read images, it can act as a streamer, it has Google Play, so PlayerOne 8K can install almost any app from Google Play Store, which includes Tidal, Qobuz, other streaming apps. It supports every single video file that I've thrown at it. This includes highly compressed codecs, including AV1, H264, H265, and all of the other high-resolution, high-quality formats. I even thrown my upscaled videos at it, including raw footage data that we take for those videos, and it reads this data flawlessly. So as a multimedia player, it basically allows you to watch your movies, to watch your content without a computer, because otherwise you can't really stream that content to a monitor or to a TV. Having a HDMI output means that you can output HDMI content, but it supports up to 4K 120 Hz for the 4K and even 8K data rates. I don't really have an 8K monitor yet to test that, and I don't know if I will upgrade to one. Right now I'm running a QLED Samsung TV, and I'm considering upgrading to an OLED TV, although only time will tell if that will be successful. PlayerOne 8K actually achieved something I was trying to do for a long time. So on my computer, I typically watch movies using MPC HC, which is still upgraded if you really look for it, together with MUD VR or MUD video render, which is a chroma upscaler, which allows you to watch movies in a much better resolution and quality than if you were using VLC or other movie players, which typically use the nearest neighbor chroma upscaling. What I also do is upscale my video library using Topaz Video IE Enhancer, which upscales every single video to 4K resolution, 120 frames per second, and removes the video judder. Now, PlayerOne 8K can do all of those things without getting hot. So to run my setup, I require an RTX 4090, the fastest GPU on the market, and I still can't really max everything out. While PlayerOne 8K runs them natively without getting warm, without getting hot, and without skipping a single frame. Even better, PlayerOne 8K can play media files smoothly, without any kind of judder, without any kind of stop motion. It does a much better job at synchronizing the TV's data rate to the original content, which is not available with most computer-based movie players. The operating system of the PlayerOne 8K is fast, it's lightning fast. It is the smoothest stuff I've ever seen. I have set it to 120 Hz, which is something I suggest you do if you purchase it, because otherwise you're not using it to its full potential. But you will be able to watch movies, to explore your library really quickly. This is one of the things it does best. You can use the remote to browse most of its settings. It even has its own IE upscaling algorithm, which works well. The IE upscaling algorithm inside of the PlayerOne 8K will not use a lot of resource, but it works best with human-based content. This means real-life videos. It doesn't work so well with cartoons, with anime. You know, if you like anime content, I even make an anime game, so I like that. But I found that with real-life content, it can reproduce textures, especially grain, leather, skin, wood, asphalt. It reproduces every single texture really nicely. You really get a good feeling of what that texture looks like in real life. And it doesn't feel like the source material was low resolution. It feels like that was the native resolution. Topaz Video IE, when used, will create a lot of aliasing and errors and pre-ringing, post-ringing. If you check some videos showcasing those, you will see that Topaz Video IE is not yet there. It creates a good image, but it's not a natural image. Topaz Video IE works a bit better for anime content because it smooths out background noise, which isn't something that I've noticed PlayerOne 8K would do. PlayerOne 8K will not smooth out background noise, and that's okay because most movies have a bit of grain added intentionally. PlayerOne 8K can reproduce the brightest, most beautiful colors I've ever seen on my television. And I've been using this particular television, for almost a year now. And I tried every single setting with my computer. I have set the same settings between the computer and the PlayerOne 8K. And PlayerOne 8K just is able to produce a much poppier image with much better color rendering. Basically, it's not just more saturated. The color feels more natural. It feels like it's there. It feels like you are right there. With my computer, I'm not able to get the same colors. Regardless of the settings I do inside the computer, my GPU and Windows in general just doesn't reproduce colors quite as beautifully as PlayerOne 8K. I don't even know why. I have tried setting the TV in every single configuration possible. To disable all of the TV's internal processing, I set it to game mode with both the computer and the PlayerOne 8K. And PlayerOne 8K still reproduces a much cleaner, more vivid image than my computer can reproduce with, regardless of the software used to play that content. I also like the fact that when using PlayerOne 8K, both low resolution and high resolution content looks crisp. With my computer, if I play high resolution content, it looks very good. But if I go for a low resolution video, it will always look quite bad. The blockiness, compression artifacts are really visible. You always notice that something is not quite right. And that doesn't happen with the PlayerOne 8K. It just shows the content as natural. It is likely part of its processing to hide compression artifacts a bit, so to hide blockiness, to have a smoother gradient. And from what I could read on their own website, PlayerOne 8K has a better 10-bit and 12-bit processing than most computers, which don't even do 444 chroma correctly. You can set the PlayerOne 8K to do either 444 chroma or to do RGB in any bit depth you desire, from 8 bits, 10 bits, and 12 bits for any resolution and any frame rate you need, or at least what HDMI supports, because HDMI supports 10-bit RGB data rate up to 4K and 120 Hz. Theoretically, it should support higher, but I was not able to get my TV to run anything higher, which I think is a limitation of the Samsung 65QN95B. PlayerOne 8K will be able to accommodate most internal hard disks in 3.5 inches, but also external hard disks. It can read micro SD cards, it can read USB thumb drives, basically anything you can throw at it, it will read. It connects to the internet, and I was able to stream YouTube, I was able to stream Tidal. It just works, everything just works. You don't really have to get too stressed about it. You just plug in the HDMI input, you connect it to the source you want, and you press play. That's it. It just works. And that is something I really appreciated, because compared to most audiophile streamers, it feels advanced. Most audiophile streamers are ages behind. They are usually very laggy. They tend to freeze a lot. PlayerOne 8K just runs smoothly. It is the only newly released product in the hi-fi world which has high frame rate support, because most DAPs, most DACs, everything just doesn't have high frame rate support, and they look a bit sluggish to my eyes, as I'm used to 120 Hz or 144 Hz usually. But PlayerOne 8K is able to support that, and it feels really satisfying. Also, because I remaster and upscale most of my videos to 120 Hz, it looks much more natural to watch them on the PlayerOne 8K than most more affordable media players that only support 60 Hz. The price of the PlayerOne 8K is 799 euros, or about 899 US dollars. There is some conversion happening there between the currencies, but what I've noticed is that using the PlayerOne 8K with SDR content or standard dynamic range content will provide a result that's just as good as if using HDR or high dynamic range. The company really makes it a point that it can handle HDR content well, including DolbyVision, HDR10+, and it really can handle that content. The one problem that I've experienced is that I don't have much of that content. Since I mainly use a computer, Windows cannot really process HDR very well. In fact, Windows can't really process HDR. It always just looks dim and boring. So what I did is that I've used the PlayerOne 8K. I tried a few HDR movies and they're stunning in the image, absolutely stunning. The problem is that I can't really get used to having a HDR movie collection, because I typically watch them on the computer where I need SDR or standard dynamic range. But it works very well with standard dynamic range as well. You can even set it to output HDR by force, so it will upscale the dynamic range, or to allow SDR to be projected as SDR, or even to downscale HDR or high dynamic range to SDR. Anything is possible with the PlayerOne 8K. You can show what the IE upscale algorithms are doing, and it has a debug mode in which it shows you the information what the algorithm is seeing and what it is processing, which is how I determined that it only works with real-life content. It doesn't really recognize anime content. So with anime, it typically doesn't really understand anything besides foliage. So green leaves, yeah, it will understand that they are green leaves, but it will make it kind of photorealistic, which doesn't work so well for anime. For anime, you want the image to not be photorealistic. You want it to look like a drawing, which PlayerOne 8K doesn't really do. So I wouldn't purchase it if it was for anime and cartoons, but I would really purchase it for movies. And I mean even music videos, concerts, and even for audiophile streaming, because the HDMI ARC is really good. The support is superb. So what I did is that I connected the PlayerOne 8K to my television, and in the back of the television I have a separate HDMI ARC output. I connected that HDMI ARC output to an external DAC. It works. I allowed the TV to play sound on its own speakers. It works. I have connected the RCA outputs of the PlayerOne 8K to an external amplifier. It works. The only thing I would call a problem is that you can't choose what output it is using. It's using all of them at once. So that can be a problem. You have to mute the television and to allow PlayerOne 8K to play only on the RCA output by not having any of the other outputs connected. But that's not that big of an issue. And in practice, I was able to use it just fine with even just stereo amplifiers, not even integrated. So it has 20 steps of volume, which sounds like it would be restrictive, but it really isn't. So you would use the remote to control the volume, you set your volume, and you can even use active speakers. I detected no background noise, but a clean and crisp sound with excellent dynamics and a very colorful presentation. So even the sonic output is very good. At its price point, I can't really find any kind of negative. It is like a mini computer, which allows you to play movies, very satisfying usage, very good in practice, and a fully recommended purchase at Audiophile Heaven. If you are curious to learn more, I have a much more technical review on audiophileheaven.com. Please check that out also. So please check out other videos from Audiophile Heaven, and I hope that you're enjoying my content. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it and to share it with your friends. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see each other really soon. Bye bye!